morning. I am redoing my video because for whatever reason the sound didn't come through. So let's try to redo it again. There are three primary categories that the video will go that I will speak on. First, I will try to give the definition of what's called family system, congregational systems, and multicultural ministry. Second, I will talk about a clear, focused, integrative statement of my philosophy on these terms: family systems, congregational system, multi-ministry, and build upon my own definitions. And then lastly, I will conclude with my exploration of what I think womanist theology or womanist thought is in concern with the relevant biblical and theological material. So, first, the family systems and congregation family system definition is that it is really about a community, church community that has each number or each member plays a specific role, and they must follow a certain rules. The next is congregational systems, and that is a community that exists within the church. And I like to think of it as how your church functions, how your church family works, or what's the emotional kind of makeup of the church. And then the last is the multicultural ministry, that really talks about a broader view or commitment that happens within the church. When you use the word ministry, I think of the word you go out into the community that happens outside. But most of our ministries, we think they're ministries, but they're really not. They're really more like feel good things. So those are the definitions. The next part is going to be the what would be, I guess, how these would intersect, or what's a clear, focused, integrative statement of my philosophy on family systems. I am AME Church. I'm part of the AME Church. This is what we are governed by. These are the rules that the AME Church has established since 1816, when we had our first bishop to establish the church. Now, they haven't changed. They have been adopted. They were adopted principles with 25 article religions. Ritual and liturgy or order of service is based in there. There are 18 items that have to be touched. And it was a Methodist adoption that we had to deal with. And it's over 200 years, 203 years old. We have modified it, but it's pretty much the same. Now, what is I guess, my own philosophy for family systems? In our denomination, those are the rules. And if you don't really like those rules, we really tell you that maybe you shouldn't do. We always say, well, you join up for an AME. You join the AME Church. We are a connectional church. And real quick, our structure is based on a hierarchy where we have Bishop Davis is our bishop for the Second Episcopal District. We have in the Second Episcopal District, you have what's called the Western North Carolina District, which is and in the Western North Carolina District, there are presiding elders, and the presiding elders work with the two individual districts. It's the Western District and the Eastern District. I was recently, and our church is a part of the one of those districts. For the with respect to we served 1 year appointment as pastors, and I was just recently moved into Western North Carolina Annual Conference 127th session. I was just reappointed to a much bigger church. Praise the Lord, a bigger church. They consider it a promotion, and that is in Raleigh now. And I'm now in the Eastern District of the Western North Carolina Conference. Okay, so my members, as I came into the church, they are AME. And the problem I have is when I look at congregational systems and I think of what community exists within the church, what's in the world is in the church. But the problem we're having is that we choose not to, and I say pastors, even we had at the annual conference, the bishop was dealing with this issue, and he said, we have to take a stand. we have to at least identify the issue. And as AMEs and all my other fellow colleagues and pastors, this is what we don't choose to. We choose not to identify the LGBTQ community that's in our church, the rape and molested community that exists within our church, the drug and addicted community that's in our church, and even the youth or the unchurched and the unbelievers. We just, for whatever reason, we walk into the door and we say everybody's the same, and that is a problem for me. And it doesn't help us, right? It doesn't help us because people have barriers, right? So when we start talking about praying, we start talking about tithing, we talk about these things, there are barriers that prevent people from engaging fully and understanding what God is trying to say to them. We don't do this very well. And so, thankful for this class, I was really open. It helped me open myself up to one, who I am, and what are some of my things that I struggle with, my presuppositions, my pre-understandings of what I bring, and understanding that people have a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of abuses that have happened to individuals, and that plays a major role in my congregational systems. What do I have? What's available to me? And so when people come at you and they come in, different ways, and it's a lot of their hurt, and me coming in as new pastor, this real, to this new church, this has really helped me because whatever happened with the previous pastor, I'm dealing with it, right? So they bringing me all their problems that they hated the previous pastor, and the previous pastor hated them, and they had this big rift between them. And so I had to come in, and I had to look at what was the emotional damage that has taken place within the church, and I can do it. One of the first things they told me is they ain't got no money. Now, baby, go figure. But God has got me there, and then so they hide money. I got a lot of things to work through, but praise the Lord, I'm trying to get through it. I think that when I get to before I can get to the multicultural ministries, I think that the family systems what I'm learning is that, do we do it in AME? Do we do it in the name of tradition? And I think we do, and not in the name of that poor Jew from Nazareth. It is a challenge for us to deal on this level of how we really invite those, how we deal with identifying the communities within our church. Um, Again, the AME discipline restricts and at the same time holds an opportunity to change or transform our denomination. And what ways would that be? Because that plays a major role in our multicultural ministries. One, the order of worship. We have 18 things that they give us that we must look at as AMEs. And there's a couple books. This is another book that was just written by Dr. Cousins, Michael Cousins. He is a pastor over at St. Paul's AME Church in Chapel Hill. And one of the things he said is that members often extol the benefits of having a common template for all AME churches to follow on Sunday morning. That is a fact. Every church in the AME connection follows that worship or that common template of worship service. That is a fact. But then he goes on to say that there should be spontaneity and freedom for expression during the membership worship experience. It is permissible to move away from the listed bulletin, or what we call our liturgy order of service. Just don't plan to do it every Sunday! Exclamation point. I have tons of folk that are traditionalists, and anytime you start shaking up the program, they get all bent out of shape. And so, but I think it's an opportunity. And I think it's an opportunity because when we talked about multicultural ministries and we talking about a broader view and incorporating many different people in ministry, most of the thing I'm looking at is unchurched and unbelievers. I'm looking at implementing something that's called a worship service that's totally different from my traditional. Meaning, I'm not doing it. I'm gonna keep. I got to keep our order of. I got to keep the traditional service like from 11 to 12. Or it goes. It's actually almost 2 hours. It's 11:45 minutes. Almost 2 hours of worship service, the traditional service. But I think we're gonna start doing a new one like 8 to 9, and that 8 to 9 worship service is only an hour, and I'm not gonna be doing any of our traditional stuff. I'm gonna come in. We're gonna pray. We're gonna tithe. We're gonna and then we're gonna give the service, and the sermon is gonna be based on the life application Bible. I got this idea from another AME pastor in Morristown, at Bethel Morristown, and he totally did it. Now, he's in some problems because the Bishop Ingram and that bishop in the First Episcopal District is upset with him because he does that one service and then he does the other, but he's getting moved. Hey, it is what it is. It runs a risk. I had to figure out how we're going to do that. And I don't know if the people were complaining, but the idea is to just open it up to allow other people to do. Also, to break free of restraints and adopt a Methodist restraints from the worship service that was adopted from Methodism over 200 years ago, and it's a tradition. So we have modified it, but we're still maintaining that structure, right? So that's something that we get the opportunity to do. The next point is to do more evangelism within the communities. In order to do multicultural ministry, I think that you have to have a broader view of the community that exists within the church. And that community is, my thing is that we have to incorporate the youth. Um, a problem we have with the youth is that I think most people are afraid of the behavior. I just preached about brother Offset, and Offset wrote a titled "Father of Four," and part of his whole comment was that, he says that he had one kid that he hadn't seen. He had another daughter that he loved, his first daughter. All that he couldn't be with them because he got locked up down the road. Second of all, his daddy left him when he was young, so he didn't know how to be a father. And the third part is that he not only didn't know that he wasn't sure if they were his kids, and he said he didn't know his mama. Yeah, those are real issues. And so we want Offset. Why? Because he then says he comes back and say, but he's coming back to take care of his family, so his kids will know him, right? So everybody's listening to Offset. He's got all these young people wrapped up, and his message, it is through hip hop, but his message is clear. That's why I love this book. This book changed my whole approach about when I started talking about multicultural ministries and stuff. Now, I am struggling because I do understand when I looked at Notre Dame and I saw how everybody responded to, when I looked at Notre Dame, I saw how everybody responded to, the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops, requested all Christians, and they came up with $1 billion to help the white privileged church. However, I saw my 3 black Baptist churches down in southern Louisiana that burned down, and in the 3 weeks they had announced they only raised $50,000, right, to build those churches. So the black people were left trying to think, well, is our God bigger than their God? Or do we worship one God? Who is it? But the black people were still burned down. And they found out it was the sheriff. It was the sheriff's son who was a white supremacist who would burn those churches down. And so the black people are now saying, my Lord, am I going to be hit with another scenario of they slapping this guy on the wrist and letting him go? All right. The president tweets out about Notre Dame when it burns and says, bless the people of France. I mean, my gosh, but he gets nothing about the black people churches who burned down in southern Louisiana. where am I going at this? I'm saying I'm full understanding that yes, white privilege had a result, and you can use a lot of people in doing your ministry. But I'm firm for liberation of my people first. I love this is an additional reading I had to do for this class, but no one asked me to do it. But I read said I wasn't gonna tell nobody by James Cone. This brother talks about liberation, and I agree with him. I believe in liberation of all people, but I believe in liberating my people first. And so, had it not been for the Seventh District Baptist Ministry to change their tradition and put a GoFundMe site, well, now we know that those three black churches got raised $2 million more. I think like $2.1 million more now to rebuild those three. So praise the Lord. But God allowed that particular ministry to grow. Global people came in to deal with it through social media. There was a big rage about white privileges and choices that they make and raising full $1 million in 4 days. In 3 weeks, they left the black people out and couldn't raise only $50,000. But as a result of that social media outrage and Twitter, God was able. God showed that He is God for all people in all ministries. But it took a non-traditional approach, which I'm trying to get through my Miami church. It takes a non-traditional approach sometimes and not trying to put God in a box. Okay, so let me keep going. There are some barriers. So you say building upon my definition. How am I doing that? And I'm still struggling because to do that, I understand the barriers that exist for me. And the barriers is that the communities that are surrounding um, the AME church, my church, for instance, and its land that we own, no longer owned by the or occupied by my members. In other words, we have another world that lives around us. It wasn't what it was 60 years ago, where black people, the church was put there and the black community lived around it. It's not like that. In fact, I would say a large percentage of our churches, AME churches and black churches, are not within the communities that supported them, that those churches were birthed in. They all are dealing with what I call a transient population, a membership, which means that now you have scattered communities coming in, and so it's not the same. So I think that when we talk about one church, 4 generations, that is what a multicultural ministry begins to look like. And you have there's a balance to try to find between our seniors and our millennials and what happens and how that works. But I think tradition denies or throws off a lot of people in our church, and especially the unbelievers. I think that this was another book that Professor gave us to read, and I've been reading this because it is some of the things that we go through, and it helped me to understand that when I look at the behavior that exists within our community, the congregational system, what you know the behavior that exists, it is because of this. It has some post-traumatic slave syndrome. It has an impact on that, and so that's a challenge. Um, as I go through developing how else developing my own definition is I do believe that Howard Thurman was right. Our backs are against the wall, but I'm still struggling with his theology, right? So I mean, I understood that he believed that Martin Luther King adopted that. I'm not sure if I could be slapped in the face and give somebody the other cheek. I'm not sure if my Jesus is truly the Jesus who was told to be submissive and set back. I just think that boy that they killed was disruptive. He wasn't interested in staying within the system. I have 1 minute left, but I just want to say that Jonah, also, this book helped me to understand, and even looking at the case studies and doing those, helped me to understand that there is a liberation. There's an ethics that goes along with it, and there's a way to do it that I can understand how I need to be. I think Professor class is really good. I got the chance to know my group. I don't work in groups, but this helped me. Rikia, Barry, and Tina, and working through this project. There's no way I could have did your class without this project, without working in a group. I thought it was a group setting. I liked your approach, your style. And lastly, with womanist theology. And womanist is, when I'm looking at womanist, the thought process, exploration, engagement, it it's a religious conceptual framework which reconsiders and revises the tradition, practices, scriptures, and biblical interpretation with a special lens to empower and liberate African women. I'm cool with that. And I notice we have a lot of women professors, and I'm cool with your theologies that you have, and you're introducing me to women's theology. But I am a man, a black man, whose voice has also been stripped away from this particular book, from the Bible. And that we are trying to understand how do I find my voice in this text? Because women's theology, I do agree, and and some part I can relate in terms of it is the care of the entire black family. But where's the black man at? Where are we at? Maybe not your issue, but it's something that I think we got to deal with. We really have to deal with this issue. So prayerfully I can get through. I really like the class. It challenged me on a lot of levels. It's a ton of work. I'm not sure if we need to do all that work, but I can tell you right now, I have been employing some of the tactics and strategies that have been given to me throughout. It asked me a lot of questions about who I am, how do I relate to people. Doing a family tree is so important when you're looking at systems and trying to understand where you're from, why you act the way you act. Lastly, there's a cemetery beside my church, and it got hit with the hurricane, and bodies of whatever the tombstones got washed away. And I'm struggling with the people because I'm talking about reclaiming their past, and they're like, Reverend, they just there. I'm like, well, who are the people? Why don't we know who you are? And it's a struggle because I know once we get into talking about expanding the ministry, if they're not interested in connecting with their past, so we can deal with that to move forward with the issues moving forward, we still gonna be spinning our wheels moving around. So what is the church role to do? We thought our great commission to go and make disciples of all nations, right? Right. That's what we're supposed to do. I'm not sure if we do that too good. But anyways, thank you very much. I hope that I make my A in your class, and I look forward to taking you again. I am so excited because I have a professor who wrote some books, and I can relate to you. Peace out.